My child. Stop scrolling for just a moment. Something has been waiting for this exact second to reach you. Out of all the voices surrounding you today, somehow your eyes landed here. That is not the part that should surprise you. The part that should make you pause is that something quietly changed this morning, long before you found these words. Heaven has been watching a conversation that no one else noticed. A decision was made behind a closed door, inside a heart that had carried questions for a very long time. Before you move away, remain with me until the very end, because what you are about to hear unfolds one piece at a time, and every piece prepares the next. I speak to you now not to fill your mind with fear, but to calm the restless place inside your spirit that has been asking, why has everything felt so delayed? You have wondered why certain doors seem to remain closed even when your intentions were pure. You have questioned silent moments that never made sense. Yet heaven has never been absent from your journey. Even when you believed nothing was moving, countless moments were quietly arranging themselves beyond your sight. There are days when dramatic miracles happen in full view of the world. Then there are mornings like this one, when the greatest changes begin with nothing more than a quiet decision inside someone's heart. Those moments rarely make noise. They do not announce themselves. They simply begin, and everything that follows is never quite the same again. Stay here. Don't skip ahead. Every sentence carries another thread of this story, and if you leave too soon, you may miss the very detail that explains why today feels different. This morning, before many people had fully begun their day, before ordinary routine settled into place, someone found herself sitting with thoughts she could no longer ignore. She had carried those thoughts for weeks, perhaps much longer than anyone realized. She replayed conversations. She remembered expressions on faces. She recalled promises once spoken and fears that had quietly followed them. Your soulmate's mother had reached a place where silence was no longer enough. For a long time she believed that waiting would somehow answer every question. She thought time alone could untangle uncertainty. But time has a way of revealing what constant thinking never can. Hearts eventually become tired of standing still. Souls eventually recognize when hesitation has lasted long enough. As dawn welcomed the morning light, something within her shifted. Not because someone pressured her. Not because anyone forced her. Like yesterday. That is the kind of morning this was. Long before you heard these words, heaven was already writing another page. And while you continued living your own day, wondering about your future, another story quietly unfolded alongside yours. There are moments when people believe they are making decisions entirely on their own. Yet often they are responding to countless moments of growth they never noticed happening inside them. Every disappointment, every conversation, every unexpected lesson slowly prepares the heart until one ordinary morning becomes extraordinary. She remembered something. Not a dramatic event. Not an argument. Not an announcement. Just one simple memory. Sometimes a single memory carries enough truth to outweigh years of uncertainty. That memory refused to leave her mind. She tried thinking about something else. She moved around the room. She distracted herself with ordinary tasks. Yet the same thought gently returned again, and again, and again. Heaven often repeats what the heart needs most until it can finally be heard. Stay until the end. What comes next explains why this memory mattered so much. She began asking herself questions she had avoided for far too long. What if I misunderstood? What if I judged too quickly? What if there is more to this story than I allowed myself to believe? Questions have incredible power. Not because they immediately provide answers, but because they open doors that certainty once kept locked. This morning, those doors quietly began opening. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. There are seasons when life convinces us that nothing is changing. Then suddenly one honest question begins reshaping everything we thought we understood. That is exactly where this story truly begins. Your soul has carried hope through moments when evidence seemed absent. You continued believing even when answers refused to arrive. You continued praying even when silence seemed louder than every response. Do not underestimate those seasons. Heaven remembers every faithful moment you thought had gone unnoticed. Every tear. Every hopeful thought. Every quiet prayer spoken when nobody else was listening. Nothing has been forgotten. The story unfolding today did not begin this morning. It only revealed itself this morning. There is a difference. Seeds are planted long before flowers appear. Foundations are built long before houses are seen. Likewise, certain blessings begin long before people recognize they have started. This is one of those moments. Pause here for another heartbeat. Do you feel how every piece seems connected to something bigger? That feeling is not accidental. There is more. Much more. She looked through old memories, not to remain trapped inside the past, but because something was inviting her to understand it differently. Events that once appeared confusing now began fitting together like pieces of a picture that had always existed, waiting for the right light to reveal it. Perspective changes everything. The mountain looks different depending on where you stand. The same story sounds different depending on when you hear it. This morning, her perspective changed. Not because circumstances demanded immediate action. Something deeper happened. A realization arrived so gently that, at first, she almost missed it. Sometimes heaven whispers instead of shouting. Sometimes the smallest whisper carries the greatest transformation. Have you ever noticed how certain mornings feel strangely different, even when everything around you appears exactly the same? The sky looks familiar. The streets remain unchanged. The ordinary sounds continue as always. Yet inside, something quietly says, today is not. That change became the beginning of another decision. She realized that fear often disguises itself as wisdom. How many opportunities has fear convinced people to postpone? How many beautiful possibilities have remained hidden because uncertainty spoke louder than faith? Today, one quiet realization interrupted that pattern. She no longer wanted fear deciding what came next. Don't skip. Something even greater is approaching. At first she simply sat in silence. No dramatic words. No emotional scene. Just stillness. Yet heaven often speaks most clearly inside stillness. The world rushes. Heaven waits. The world demands immediate conclusions. Heaven patiently reveals deeper understanding. As she remained there, another thought settled gently into her heart. It wasn't loud. It wasn't overwhelming. It simply refused to disappear. What if this is the moment I have been waiting for? Those words echoed quietly within her spirit. Not because someone else suggested them. Because they arrived naturally, peacefully, unmistakably. Sometimes peace tells us more than endless analysis ever could. She noticed something unusual. The worries that had once seemed enormous suddenly appeared much smaller. Not because every question had disappeared. Because her heart was no longer carrying them alone. There is strength that arrives without making noise. There is courage that enters quietly. There is wisdom that never needs to announce itself. This morning carried all three. Perhaps you wonder why heaven is allowing you to hear this story now. Because timing matters. If you had heard these words yesterday, they would not have carried the same meaning. If you waited much longer, you might overlook what heaven wants your heart to prepare for. Remain with me. Something extraordinary is still waiting ahead. Your soulmate does not yet understand everything that happened this morning. That may surprise you. Sometimes decisions begin before everyone connected to them recognizes they exist. Like sunrise reaching mountain peaks before valleys receive its light. Change often arrives gradually. First one heart. Then another. Then another. Until suddenly everyone realizes something beautiful has already begun. Heaven delights in quiet beginnings. Many expect miracles to arrive with thunder. Yet countless miracles begin with gentle choices made in ordinary rooms. A simple decision. A peaceful realization. A softened heart. These moments reshape futures. This morning became one of those mornings. The mother who once carried hesitation now carried curiosity. The mother who once questioned everything now desired understanding. The mother who once stood still now found herself ready to move. Notice something important. None of this happened through pressure. Love never grows through force. Truth never needs manipulation. Heaven gently leads willing hearts. That is exactly what happened. She remembered seeing qualities she had overlooked before. Small acts of kindness. Quiet patience. Faithfulness during difficult seasons. Humility that asked for no applause. Sometimes people only recognize another person's character after enough time has passed. Character reveals itself slowly. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be manufactured. It simply becomes visible. Today, that visibility increased. One realization after another quietly built momentum inside her heart. Like the first drops before gentle rain. Like the first rays before sunrise. Like the first notes before a beautiful song reaches its fullest expression. Everything was building. Everything was preparing. Everything was pointing towards something not yet spoken aloud. Don't leave now. The next part of this story carries the heartbeat of everything you have heard so far. There are unseen moments when heaven invites people to release assumptions they have carried for years. Those assumptions feel comfortable because they have existed so long. Yet comfort is not always truth. This morning she quietly released one assumption. Then another. Then another. Each release created space. Space for hope. Space for grace. Space for possibilities she once believed were impossible. Do you see how transformation happens? Not all at once. One honest moment at a time. One surrendered thought at a time. One courageous decision at a time. That is how heaven often works. Your own journey has followed the same pattern, even if you never realized it. The prayers you whispered months ago still echo before heaven. The hopes you almost abandoned were never abandoned by the one who heard them. Nothing sincere disappears. Everything meaningful continues its journey until the proper season arrives. This season feels different because it is different. Something hidden has begun moving, not hurriedly, not recklessly, but steadily, quietly, purposefully. As the morning continued, she finally reached toward something she had avoided touching for a long time. Her hand paused for a brief moment, as though she understood that once she continued, there would be no returning to the place she had occupied before today. Some moments separate yesterday from tomorrow. Some choices quietly divide one chapter from the next. This was becoming one of those choices. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing became calmer. She closed her eyes for just a moment. Then she whispered words no one else heard. Words simple enough to fit inside a single breath. Yet powerful enough to begin changing everything. What she whispered, and what she chose immediately afterward, became the very decision heaven has been waiting to reveal. But that decision is only the beginning. Because what happened in the next few moments would send invisible ripples far beyond that quiet morning. Reaching toward your soulmate, reaching toward futures that had not yet unfolded, and reaching toward something neither of them expected. And that, beloved child, is where part 1 must end. My beloved child, do not rush past this moment. Stay with me, because the story you have been following has now reached the place where quiet thoughts become real choices. You have waited patiently, and every word until now has been preparing your heart for what comes next. Something extraordinary is still unfolding. Do not skip. Stay until the end, because the greatest revelation has not yet been spoken. The whisper that rested upon your soulmate's mother's heart did not disappear when she opened her eyes. Instead, it became clearer. What had once felt like uncertainty now carried a strange peace. She could no longer convince herself that nothing needed to change. The questions that had followed her for so long suddenly began pointing toward a single answer. There are moments when heaven gently removes the fog from a person's vision. Nothing outside changes immediately, yet everything inside becomes brighter. The same memories remain, the same people remain, the same circumstances remain, but the heart begins seeing them through compassion instead of fear. That was the miracle quietly taking place. She remembered conversations she had once dismissed. She remembered moments she had barely noticed. Little acts of kindness suddenly became impossible to ignore. She recalled patience where she had once seen weakness. She recognized quiet strength where she had once expected loud confidence. Sometimes the greatest qualities cannot be seen until the heart is finally ready to recognize them. Remain here. Something even more surprising is about to happen. As morning light filled the room, she found herself thinking about the future instead of the past. That alone surprised her. For so long, every thought had circled around old questions. Now her heart was beginning to imagine possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider before. Hope entered quietly. Hope rarely announces itself. It simply appears, and suddenly tomorrow no longer feels impossible. She stood beside a window for several long moments. Outside, the world continued exactly as it always had. People walked through ordinary routines. Birds crossed the morning sky. Gentle sunlight rested upon familiar streets. Yet inside her spirit, an entirely different day had begun. Heaven often starts changing hearts before circumstances ever reveal it. That is why so many miracles seem to arrive unexpectedly. They have actually been growing for much longer than anyone realizes. Don't skip. The next part explains why this morning became unforgettable. She quietly spoke words that no one else heard. I don't want fear to make this decision anymore. Those simple words carried years of hidden emotion. The weight she had carried began lifting. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But enough for her breathing to become lighter. Enough for her thoughts to become clearer. Enough for peace to replace endless hesitation. There is a freedom that arrives when a person finally releases what has been holding them back. Perhaps your own heart understands that feeling. Perhaps there has been something you have also struggled to release. Heaven understands every hidden battle. Nothing escapes his notice. As she continued reflecting, another realization gently arrived. She understood that people grow. Sometimes they grow quietly. Sometimes they grow through disappointment. Sometimes they grow through prayers that no one else ever hears. She wondered whether she had been looking at an old version of the story while heaven had already begun writing a new one. That realization changed everything. She no longer wanted yesterday to decide tomorrow. She wanted truth to decide tomorrow. Stay until the end. This story is reaching a turning point. Far away, your soulmate had no idea that these thoughts were filling another heart. Life continued as normal. Ordinary responsibilities demanded attention. Conversations came and went. Smiles appeared. Silence followed. Yet without realizing it, something invisible had already begun moving toward them. This is how many blessings arrive. One heart changes first. Another heart feels the effect later. Then suddenly two separate journeys meet in ways neither expected. The timing of heaven is never random. It is patient. It is intentional. It is beautiful. She remembered one sentence someone had spoken long ago. At the time it seemed insignificant. This morning it returned with unexpected clarity. She realized that wisdom often arrives years after words are first spoken. How many blessings begin with a sentence that makes sense only much later? Heaven wastes nothing. Every lesson has its season. Every conversation has its purpose. Every delay carries hidden preparation. That truth settled deeply within her heart. For the first time in a very long while, she smiled. It was not because every answer had arrived. It was because hope had returned. Hope changes the atmosphere of a room. Hope changes the direction of conversations. Hope changes the choices people are willing to make. Without realizing it, she was already becoming someone different than she had been only hours before. Do not leave now. The next moment is one of the most important in this story. She walked slowly toward a place she had avoided for quite some time. Every step seemed ordinary. Yet heaven understood that each step represented something far greater. Courage. Acceptance. Trust. She paused again. One final moment of silence. Then she made the decision. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. She decided she would no longer stand in the way of what peace was encouraging her to understand. The walls she had quietly built inside her heart began falling one by one. Not because someone argued with her. Because love had patiently remained consistent. Truth had patiently remained visible. Kindness had patiently remained unchanged. The strongest transformations often happen without a single argument. They happen because genuine character quietly speaks for itself. That is exactly what had happened here. Heaven had been working through ordinary moments all along. Every act of patience. Every respectful word. Every sincere prayer. Every unseen sacrifice. None of them had been wasted. Remain here. Something even greater is approaching. After making that decision, she realized another step still remained. A decision inside the heart eventually desires expression. Thoughts eventually become conversations. Peace eventually becomes action. She knew that keeping everything to herself was no longer possible. But she also understood that timing mattered. There was a right moment. A prepared moment. A moment that heaven alone could arrange. Instead of rushing ahead, she chose wisdom over urgency. She whispered another quiet prayer. Guide every next step. Those simple words echoed through heaven. Never underestimate a sincere prayer. Some prayers appear small on earth but shine brightly before heaven. Your own prayers have done the same. Perhaps you have wondered whether heaven truly heard them. The answer has always been yes. Every honest prayer continues working long after the final word has been spoken. As the morning continued, something unexpected happened. A small reminder appeared before her. It seemed ordinary. Perhaps insignificant to anyone else. Yet it immediately brought the decision back to the front of her heart.